Last week, we started off great. Eleanor Carucci's lecture was incredibly thought-provoking and got us off and rolling, and student responses to the lecture was really, really interesting. So, and we had a good discussion, too, right after her talk. So same thing with tonight. Tonight, we're lucky and privileged to have another visiting artist, and Jessica Munich-Ganger will introduce her in a second. But as always, the floor belongs to the artist, and the artist dictates the time and whether she'd like to take questions during her talk or at the end. So completely up to you. But we always leave at least 10 or 15 minutes of conversation and dialogue with you folks. So I should highlight that it'd be great for all of you to spread the word and tell fellow classmates and friends and colleagues and family members that they're more than welcome to come next week and see our visiting artist, Anna Kavarkis, who is jewelry and metals. So that will be a different medium. We switch around. Last week was photography, and tonight is printmaking. Yes. I say that because as a completely 100% interdisciplinary artist, which the graduate students will probably make fun of that me choosing a medium, but my primary medium was printmaking. So there's something about printmaking, right? There's something about that medium. There's something about it when someone dedicates their life to printmaking that it grasps holds on them and really becomes something larger than life. And as evidence of that, one can simply even just read the Third Coast Digest article that just came out on Greg Martin's and see how art transforms someone's life. And it's just, it brings tears to your eyes. It's unbelievable. But there's something about printmaking. And every time, every spring, printmakers from around the country and the world gather at the Southern Graphics Conference and talk about the work and talk about how the whole medium has evolved and is anything and everything. It's interdisciplinary, it's street art, it's installation art, it's art collective, and it's an incredibly exciting time to be a printmaker. And so many of the UWM printmakers are going to New Orleans this spring to go to the Southern Graphics Conference. And last year, many of them might have went to St. Louis, where our guest tonight was one of the major hosts of Southern Graphics in St. Louis. And next year, it is coming to Milwaukee. Thanks so much to the number of people in this room, including our own Jessica Munich-Ganger, the fabulous Jessica. Come on up.
Out my introduction here in 9-point type. I have a lot to say, perhaps. Anyway, thank you, Nicholas, for such a wonderful introduction there. Wow. Yeah, it's my pleasure tonight. Thank you all for coming to introduce Lisa Bulawsky. She's a St. Louis-based artist. She teaches at Washington University, and as Nicholas described, she was the host of Southern Graphics last year, so following her all around, asking her questions, and that, her purpose here is to share her work with you, and it's just amazing. I was first exposed to her by Richard Noyce in his 2006 book, Printmaking at the Edge, which is a staple in my classroom, and there's always a post-it note affixed to the section that describes her work. I'm really impressed with how she employs printmaking as a technique in ranging ways. She really stretches the process in multiple and really creative, unique ways. In the book, she describes herself as a generalist and a blasphemist, interested in the populist tradition in printmaking and its democratic potential. Just with our application and our use of printmaking over in the recent past, we've just been able to promote the program and do meaningful things with our prints around the community. Some of her projects, well, I invited her tonight because her work often embodies themes that I promote in our area, themes such as community engagement, print as a democratic medium, the importance of making through the print, ink under one's nails. And I get a strong sense that she encourages those around her to be engaged in what's going on in the community and to really have fun. Lisa was awarded the NEA Fellowship in 1996 for her work in printmaking and works on paper. Her prints are in many collections, including the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp, Belgium, the House of Humor and Satire in Kralovo, Bulgaria, and the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City, and many, many more. Lisa has had numerous solo exhibitions and recent group shows that include High Point Center for Printmaking in Minneapolis, one of my favorite places in the world, Urban Institute of Contemporary Art in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the Dalarnas Museum in Sweden, where her work was included in the Found Triennial in 2007. Examples of some of her projects, she does beautiful, you'll see these in her presentation tonight, she does beautiful prints on paper and drawings, but also her projects include things such as gathering a group of participants and using a city bus as a printmaking press, driving over huge printmaking blocks and transferring the image to vinyl and putting it back on the bus. She also founded Blind Spot Gallery, which was a white minivan that served as a mobile gallery space. It exhibited prints on magnets, adhered to the exterior, many things, lots of, which I'm sure she'll share you today. So rather than me going through all of this, let's invite Lisa up here to present her work. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Feeling that you're going to hear me sighing a lot. That was mean. I didn't mean to be mean. Can you still hear me if I put it down here?
Okay. That's a loud mic, so yeah.
It's a loud one. Maybe this way, because I'm really nervous and I might sigh a lot, and I don't want to blow you all away. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Nicholas, and thank you, Jessica. We've had a great day already, just talking about printmaking and walking around and thinking about the conference that they've been talking about being hosted here. I think it's going to be a fantastic conference. So, wish you luck. Accept it. I'll help you as much as I can. So I wanted to start with this image. You've had a chance to stare at it for a while now. It's an image, an older one that I did actually in my last year of graduate school. It's called She Doesn't Have to Choose. She's holding at arm's length two sort of rhyming forms. One is a cocoon and the other is a tornado. I had just moved to Kansas where I went to graduate school. I had moved from California, so the tornado was really sort of a significant feature of that move. But I use this slide to start with because I don't have to choose. My work traverses a lot of different territories, and I sort of walk both lines. Let's see. I'm also, you might see me doing a little bit of like a tennis match here, working with two screens. Sorry, hang on. So, speaking of the two things, I'm going to simplify my work in a way tonight. I do a lot of different things, as Jessica said. I work in installation, video, works on paper, and temporary public art. And most of the work that I'll show you tonight are the works on paper and the public work. So in this work, in both sets of work, I'm really doing two things. I'm kind of asking the big questions about life in a way. I'm using my work and printmaking as a way of investigating the poetics of experience and big themes like love and joy and history and identity, which you'll see through the work that I show. And then I'm also really pushing around in the muck of printmaking. What does it mean philosophically and physically to make a print? This is the press room at Washington University. It's the current press room. You can see on the right side there's a 5 by 10 foot press. This is a hallmark of the program there. When I was hired there in 1996, I was hired because my work really meshed well with the philosophy, which was that prints should compete with painting and sculpture. You should make big work that commands the same attention and presence. And I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, that's why I sort of easily fit in there. But when I started teaching, I really also wanted to start investigating what it meant to make a print. In 2001, I got my own press. This is my current studio. It's in my garage. It's about a 500 square foot space, which is taken up 50% by the press. So I started teaching, and I got my own press, which really forced me to think more about my own philosophy about making prints. And the first series that I did when I got the press was called Problem Plays, and I gave myself the assignment to only print, something that I had never done before. I always was mixing acrylic and drawing and collage and you know, kind of mashing those marks and the voices of those mediums together, but I wanted to really stick to printmaking. So I did a series of monoprints. The series is called Problem Plays. It's based on the title of what the last 3 plays by William Shakespeare are called, which is Problem Plays. And those set out to explore specific moral dilemmas and social problems through central characters. And usually those characters are neither heroic nor villains, but somewhere in between, some kind of flaw is inherent in them. So I did a series of 13 portraits. This is Harvey Milk. It's a sort of indication of my childhood in the 60s, growing up in California. As a child of the 60s and a student of the 80s, a good student of postmodernism and kind of relativist ideas, the question authority generation, the fact that there is no greater truth or reality, that all subjective realities are equal. So my selection of some of these people is just about how we're all human, and we're all flawed, and we can identify with their follies. This is Hugh Hefner. I think of these as kind of social portraiture, I guess. And I think there's an element of humor. There's definitely an element of humor, obviously. Hugh Hefner is in a smoking jacket, and he's blasting off like a rocket, and he's shooting out Viagra pills, and on the side, you know, he had actually had a species of marsh rabbit named after him. That's on the side there. But really, I felt a sense of simpatico with these people. I'm not intending to make fun of them necessarily, although they're somewhat satirical. So this sort of development of my ideas around printmaking was coming along with this series of prints, and it's really shaped through the years. And I've sort of narrowed it down to the 3 M's: the mark, the matrix, and the multiple. I call it the 3-headed monster of printmaking. To me, these are the 3 inherent philosophical and physical characteristics of print. So it's just, I'm not going to read this to you or anything, but these are sort of the ways that I think about the mark. If you think about a printed mark, goes through the press, the ink is pushed into the paper, usually. Compare that to a graphite mark that you can take an eraser to, and it's gone. And there's a sense of security to it, and a depth, and an embedding. And for me, you'll see in my more recent work, it's really kind of about a sense of mortality, this sort of what I call scratching on the lid of the coffin. I was here, I was here. That kind of marking, or fighting. I did a Hillary Clinton as part of that series. She was young, yes. This is this is from, you'll see the full-length woodcut. It's a life-size woodcut from her, well, she was wearing her inaugural gown for Bill Clinton's inauguration as governor of Arkansas in 1972. So these prints combine a lot of different processes. They're all print. This is, so Eleanor's woodcut, Hillary's woodcut, and Eleanor, who's sort of embedded in her belly. You see Eleanor Roosevelt. The shape of Hillary's body is just a piece of rubber that had been stamp cut that I inked up. It's got collograph and some digital printing. The clown in the corner, which is kind of representative of Bill, is a digital collage piece. So the second thing in the 3M, the second M is the matrix, which is simply, for those of you who aren't printmakers, it's the block or the plate or the stone. It's the thing that you draw on. So it's where the image is transferred from. But I tend to think about it more metaphorically, as a womb or the source. And it's the thing that can remain stable so that you can print many of the same thing that looks exactly the same. Or it also implies that you can change things endlessly. So here's an example of a time where I actually used the matrix itself. I was just describing the full-length woodcut of Hillary, and this is installed in an exhibition. It's a lovely gown she was wearing, but it kind of looks transparent there, doesn't it? Like it's a negligee. And then this is kind of fun. I can only show you this for a second. There's Bill hugging the matrix. The Clintons own that piece now, but I'm not supposed to show that picture to anybody. So then the third M is the multiple. We say it all the time. It's the democratic medium. I think it's a little trite now, but it does speak volumes. Like, you make more than one of something, it's accessible to more people. So in that sense, it's democratic. I just had a kind of little argument with one of my students. She's saying, well, you know, it's really hard to find a press or a print shop where you can make prints, so it's not accessible at all. You have to be, you know, like enrolled in a school or pay money. And I was like, okay, you're right, but you have to think about it from the point of view of the viewer, not the viewer, necessarily. So, I can give you those notes too. I have that whole marked matrix, the whole thing written up. So when I was teaching, and I was teaching in this environment with this big press and emphasis on mixed media, I tried to also ask students to think about this history of the print as the democratic medium. And I would ask them to do projects like educate the masses, whatever that means to you. And we started doing kind of crazy things, printing with my car in the parking lot, making plates that went on the bottoms of our shoes, and printing on the sidewalk as we marched around St. Louis. One class, this was a lithography class, did this kind of counterculture prank called yard sale, where we put an ad in the paper and said there was going to be a yard sale at my house. 50 free couches to the first 50 customers. And it was a scary morning, I have to say. Looking out my window, it was like Night of the Living Dead, all these people wandering through my yard looking for the couches, which were, of course, simulated, printed couches, not real couches. And this is the project that Jessica referred to. This was for a class that I taught called From Propaganda to Decoration. And it was part of a public art workshop where we sort of performed the final event of the workshop We created a 3 by 11 foot woodcut that was then printed by the pressure of the bus running over it. We printed it onto magnetic vinyl and then lifted that vinyl up and stuck it directly to the bus, which went on its route after we were done. It was fun. So all of these projects that I was doing with students, they were really their projects, but I was kind of involved in facilitating. They were really energizing and inspiring. And so in the summer of 2000, I started to do some public projects just on my own. I formed a pseudonym to do those projects called Vertigo Press, which is based on the Yves Klein Leap into the Void image and some of his ideas as well. This is one of the, maybe the second or third outdoor project, public project that I did. It's called Oh Joy. These are hand-pulled woodcuts that I wheat pasted around the city of St. Louis and on porta potties. And I just dress up in a white jumpsuit and go out in the middle of the day with a bucket and paste these up. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Swoon's work. Of course, at this time, I think it was 2001 or 2002, I did not know anything about Swoon. She's a really amazing and inspiring artist and person. And her impulse to work on the street and share her images came from an interest in participating in the life of the city, the creation of the city, and like the texture of the city. And she claims all spaces as open spaces, as visual spaces, for both makers and dwellers to interact with. But I started to feel uncomfortable with the places that I was putting my work up. In St. Louis, there's a lot of red-lined areas. There's a lot of, but it's coming back a little bit. You know, I was putting things up in neighborhoods. They weren't my neighborhoods. They were neighborhoods where there were buildings that were boarded up, and I felt a little hypocritical and imperialistic by sort of imposing my images and my values on those people. So I decided to bring the work a little closer to home and began a project on my car. So this is a close-up of the side of my minivan. This is the first magnetic project I did on my own. It's called Alms. The P is silent, because the idea is that these are images of hands in the gesture of offering, and then the magnets themselves are meant as offerings. So it's sort of a double entendre. And that summer, I did a lot of traveling. I drove all around the Midwest, delivering work to shows and stuff, and the magnets slowly disappeared from the car. People would take them off. I didn't have to tell them to do this always, unless somebody stopped me and asked me, what's this all about? And I'd say, oh, please take one. But the idea is that they were free, and that they were gifts. Felix Gonzalez Torres is maybe, I think you could call him the father figure of this kind of way of working. I think he really shook up sense of the normal economies of the art world by doing this kind of work, which is a stack of offset lithographs that, if you haven't seen these before, it's like these candy pieces. You know, when it's installed in the museum replenishes this stack as the public takes them. They're meant to be free. They're meant to be have a life with the viewer, not just in the museum. So after I did the Alms piece, I decided the car was a great place to work. And I liked the idea of upsetting that kind of economy of the art world and bypassing art world obstacles to getting work out to the people. So I started a gallery on my car called Blind Spot Galleries. The first show, I did show my work. I showed my work as a reproductive, retrospective survey along with Ida Appleblue and Francisco de Goya. Thought I'd never get a chance to do that again. So these are digital magnets. And then I began showing the work of other artists on the car. I had 10 shows in the 3.5 years of the gallery ran. This is by Brandon Anschultz, a play on the country squire wagon. And this is actually, I was displaying an exchange portfolio that I was involved in. I put this slide in here because, you know, all along I was thinking about distribution, you know, and dissemination, and the multiple, and I thought just putting the work on the car was one thing, but I hadn't really counted on the wind helping me in the distribution. So these are just Xeroxes that are stuck with magnets to the car, which turns out to be not enough to hold them on the car. And they all blew away within about 6 blocks of driving. So shifting gears just a little bit, this is actually one of my favorite sort of spontaneous, collective, public pieces that I've actually witnessed in person. This is on the Ponte Vecchio Bridge in Florence, Italy. These are locks that people have taken a Sharpie marker and written the name of their name and their lover's name on, and then thrown the key in the Arno River, and they just build up and collect, and locks attached to locks. And then a couple of years go by, and the city cuts them all off. I really love this piece. But it was in 2005 when I was teaching in Florence that a new project started. I was teaching a course called Hyper Studio. The students were working with, they were building web pages, basically as a metaphor for the kind of disjunctive experience of being in a new country, and the kind of the hyperlinking and jumping from one thing to the next because everything is so new. And so it made me start thinking about how memory functions and the kind of blossoming of images that happen when you think of an event and then it links to another thing. Kind of like when you hear a song that you haven't heard in a long time, it reminds you of something and links to people that you were in the car with or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So I started this series, Flashbulb Memories, like a strategy of trying to represent that kind of blossoming of hyperlinked memories. And it really kind of did interesting things to my compositional sensibility, which haven't changed since then, but I'm really trying to get away from I always covered the whole page. So I was really trying to work with that idea of the images kind of blossoming like holograms almost. So these are mixed media. They're one of a kind. They combine print and drawing. This, for instance, about the Vietnam War, just to give you a sense of like what I'm combining here. I remember hearing about the end of the Vietnam War while riding in the back of my family's station wagon. It's about this time I was in middle school and I started to get acne, and I was drawing the Draw Susie and the donkey out of the back of Teen Magazine. You guys know what I'm talking about? So those are some of the things that I was combining in this image. And they're all kind of like that. They take a moment in history, and then I sort of backed up and sort of thought about what was going on in my life. So this is, I combined Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy together. They were only about 3 months apart. In my memory, it was like all mashed together. I think it bears, maybe doesn't bear saying, but I tend to work in pretty discrete series until I've sort of exhausted an idea. So I began the series as really just as kind of monotypes, as sketches, trying to represent that kind of fluid impression of memory images that I associate with these historical events. But actually the term flashbulb memories are the memories that we associate with very surprising or consequential events, often traumatic events. I was considering telling you about this image, but I'm embarrassed. Here, this one's even better. I'll tell you this one. So, Mount St. Helens, is that 1980? Yeah. I was living in Berkeley. I graduated from high school early and moved with a friend to Berkeley, and I took some acid. And I saw Jesus. Do you guys know the artist Christian Bulawsky? Yeah. So he has done a lot of thinking and a lot of work on memory and history. And I like the way he describes two types of memories. He says, because the big memory is already there in books, it's the small memory that interests me. Knowing the best place to get tape, or knowing a certain joke. Those kinds of memories are the most easily lost. Each person is so important, but also so fragile. That really gets to a lot of what I'm thinking about and working with. When I'm working, I tend to work pretty spontaneously, pretty intuitively. I start with a single image. So the image of these sort of truncated legs, they're boxers that are fighting, but I remove the bodies. Was the first thing that I started with to deal with the LA riots. And then, you know, there's like a crown which represents Rodney King, and a police hat, and I don't think you can see it. Oh yeah, you can. It says La La La, which is also LA, LA. Oklahoma City bombing. And I think the traumas in our lives are more easily remembered than the triumphs. But this is a biological thing, really. I think adrenaline is released when something traumatic happens, and those memories are therefore etched stronger in our memories. And I think the traumas, maybe more than the triumphs, define our identity, our national identity, and shape who we are. This is the last one I'll show from this series. This is from 9/11. It's actually where I stopped the series. I was lying on the couch with the knee brace on. I had just had knee surgery. My knee felt like it was on fire. So that's some of the combination of imagery there. And this is a project I did in collaboration with my partner, Dan Kelly. This is an installation and one-night performance event where we used database programming and AM radio transmission to provide immortality to the people who participate. This is just a shot from the outside. That's the window of the gallery. What people did is they entered their information, their life data, into our collection and storage facility, and then we broadcast that information by AM radio transmission. And the idea is that those waves, kind of like multiple, and this is sort of an extension of printmaking, if you'll follow me here. Radio waves travel forever. So eventually, maybe these radio waves will be received, and these people who entered their life data will achieve immortality. So in the space, we had a computer set up where people sat and typed. This is the AM radio. It looks like it's broken, but it worked fine. The computer voice, you know, we had the computer set up to read the people's life data information, and then it was broadcast. But and we also showed videos in the back. We collaborated on a lot of video work. And then people could, on site, enter their life data, and at the same time, gain their little moment of fame on the window of the gallery. And we're still tracking the transmission of those radio waves. This is an old slide, but if you go to this website now, you'll see that the number of miles that those waves have traveled has been updated. I guess there's no way of knowing really if they've been received. participation has become a really important part of my work, and I just wanted to show the work of Ravani Neuenschwander really quick. This is her ribbon piece that she's been repeating over a number of years. There's a wall of ribbons of people's wishes, and when you come to the exhibition, you can take one of the ribbons off the wall, and then you're asked to submit your own wish, which is the little pieces of paper that are sticking out. So then the next time she realizes the piece in another setting, she incorporates the new wishes. She does a lot of interesting things with participation, different levels of participation, and different people who have to participate, like the general public, but also the museum staff. She has a water piece where the museum staff are involved in activating it and making sure that it continues. So in 2008, I started a project called Radiate Cultivate, and in a really broad sense, it's kind of an environmental piece. It's a warning and a comment on our capacity for destruction or for self-destruction. What I did is I screen printed these wooden mushroom clouds about the size of a bush, and I gave them to people all over the world and asked them to plant them. Participants or whoever was doing the planting could choose the site where they were going to plant their mushroom cloud. All they had to do was send me an image. So this is just such a bizarre image, the way it's lit. I love this, with her dog running in the background. It was very surreal. But that's in England. This is also in England. I love this image because in the very far background is a chalk drawing, I don't know, 1,000-year-old chalk drawing that's carved into the hillside, the Cerniatus giant. In that kind of way that those two things are in dialogue with each other, the mark made on the world. I think of the print that way. I think of it as this activated artifact. It's a residue of the artist or an index of the action and kind of a mortal mark on the world. There's your Lake Michigan, a little farther south. This is down in Chicago. I don't have a slide of it, but on the back side, there's a quote printed from Theodore Adorno that says, "Yet the fully enlightened earth radiates disaster triumphant." So it's printed in English, but I also printed it in Utopian. In Thomas More's book, Utopia, he invented a Utopian alphabet. So I included that. There's actually a font you can get to translate. So the Blind Spot Gallery's piece died in 2005 with my minivan when the head gasket blew. And I just let the whole thing go to the junkyard. But then in 2009, I was asked to resurrect it. So the piece I did is called All in Good Company, All in Good Time. I used magnets, again. These are all woodcut portraits to honor the dead. And in this case, it was people who died between July 3rd, 2008 and July 3rd, 2009. My mother was one of those people. There were 19 others, including Michael Jackson, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, David Carradine, B. Arthur, and others, Farrah Fawcett. I made like a pizza car topper thing to go on top of the gravestone, and kind of borrowed an image from an early American gravestone, and also made red poppies, a symbol of rebirth and remembrance. And this is just the piece on another car. This is for the exhibition Multiple by Multiple at the Ewing Gallery at the University of Tennessee. I gave a talk, I guess it was last year in Toronto. I was on a panel called Print and the Public Sphere. And I ended the presentation with this image and this idea. I'm going to read. The print, like the public it engenders, is ephemeral. Like life, it is short. But it is also everlasting and regenerative. The plural title of the project, Blind Spot Galleries, refers to its implicit continuation. Once a magnet is removed from the car and placed in another context, it becomes part of the gallery as well. So the multiple begets multiplicity. Participation begets community. The print as organism mirrors our agency, our mortality, and our collective humanity. It's heavy. So I've been pretty involved in remembrance and honoring the dead and memory and history in the last 5 years. So this is another project that I did for the MAPC conference in Minneapolis. We belong to this band. About 37 artists contributed portraits of their favorite dead hero, artist hero. This is the Facebook page, just the images posted on Facebook, which is where I recruited people to participate. We collaborated with All Along Press in St. Louis to print all of the people volunteered blocks on a letterpress. We've made over 6,000 prints, which we bound into pads that were made to be tear-off pads. And then we attached them to stakes and planted them all over Minneapolis. About 100 stakes got planted in different areas of the city, including in the sculpture garden, which I think is an interesting juxtaposition. This is on a Maya Lin piece in front of the courthouse. And then I just want to show you one more project. Following on the Flashbulb Memory series, and as a result of some really wonderful conversations I had with my mother as she was dying, where I interviewed her and I kind of collected her oral history, I got the idea to do a similar thing to Flashbulb Memories, but using other people's memories. So I got a grant, a research grant, and I interviewed people over the age of 70 and asked them about their personal memories in relation to 4 events in history. This is Helen and Bernie. They're just 2 of the people that I interviewed. The four events were broadly World War II, the assassination of JFK, Apollo 11 moon landing, and 9/11. With the project, I was really hoping, in my proposal for my grant, I suggested that I might be able to create some kind of subjective history or visual portrait of who we are as Americans. I'm not sure I succeeded in doing that. But anyway, each one of these images is a composite of different people's memories. So this combines one person's recollection of going to the store for her mother and getting a loaf of Wonder Bread and carrying it over her shoulder, and by the time she got home, having it be in the shape of the letter C, because it's so soft. Right? You guys have stopped responding. With a redacted letter. And I won't tell you all the stories, although I have to tell you this one. Because this was when I became, it was, I don't know, just interesting collecting stories and not worrying about whether truth is necessarily involved. This man grew up in Kansas, and he claims that all the men in town, in this little town, were away at war, and a plane crashed in a field nearby, and so they sent all the children out with fruit baskets to pick up the parts. And when I was interviewing him, I felt like you needed to collect the plane parts so you could melt down the metal, and he's like, no. heads, arms, legs. You know. He had lots of stories. When I just exhibited this series, there's 21 images in the series. The exhibition was actually not titled Prosthetic Memories, it's titled 4 Chapters in the Present We Were. I was thinking of each event as a chapter in history. So I created title pages, basically, chapter titles. And this is the chapter title for World War II. And then this is an image from the JFK memories. So these are all monoprints as well. They all include a soft ground etching plate, usually the thing that's the most sort of bitten memory for the person that I interviewed, the thing that really jumped out the quickest, is the thing that I made on the etching plate. So it really bit into the paper and was, you know, the most securely there. Many people remembered or were really hung up on the idea that Jackie Kennedy wore the same suit that was covered with her husband's blood for over 24 hours. So that theme came up a lot. But it's interesting that JFK, that event, was the first time really in American history that everybody bonded over the television image of a news event. All of the events of World War II were transmitted by radio. So a lot of the memories that people had were about sitting around the radio or sitting in front of the television when we get to this point. So this one is actually recalling a woman who was ironing her husband's shirts when the news broke across the TV. I should also mention that the term prosthetic memories comes from a book, a research book by Alison Lansberg, where she talks about the idea of a memory being prosthetic is being brought to us through mass media, through technology. So we haven't lived through something ourselves, but we come to feel like it's our own memory through Schindler's List or the news. This is the title page for 9/11. This is the shape of the ash cloud on the South Tower. I just removed the towers so that the shape of the cloud stands alone. It's hundreds and hundreds of pieces of printed paper that are cut and layered. I don't think you can see that. It's very fluffy, like an ash cloud. And this is one of the 9/11 memories. In the exhibition, I also edited and played the audio track of the interviews, kind of mixed together, and then allowing some of the stories to rise up out of that chatter, as opposed to having any kind of text that explained the visual work. It gives you an idea of scale. And I got a chance to have some of the people that I interviewed come to the exhibition, which was really, really rewarding. I mentioned earlier that I'm not sure that the series worked out the way I wanted it to. One of the sort of disappointments is the disconnect between the joy and meaningfulness of talking and getting to know these people, and then the sort of distance between that and the work I made. I'm not sure what to do with that at this point, but I do feel good about this project in the sense that it brought together the two sort of strains of public and private in a new way for me. And I just want to end by showing two images talking about this idea about public and private. Felix Gonzalez-Torres did this billboard piece as a comment on public art and the idea that there is really no public anymore. Even this billboard is owned by somebody, so it's private. And I think we're at a point now, oh, sorry, you weren't looking at what I was. This billboard, I think we're at a point now where there's no private either. There's Facebook and surveillance cameras and Patriot Act, and you don't really have much privacy left. This is a Banksy intervention into a private museum where he hung his own work. So I don't know what to do with that either, like this sort of merging of public and private, but I think it's a fascinating time to be thinking about it. So, thank you. Anybody have a question? Yeah.
I do. So do you have to drive a different car if you like want privacy? You know what I mean? Like if you don't.
I can't pick my nose when I'm driving.
Right.
Yeah.
But do you have another car that you use so that like you have a little anonymity or?
No, I think it's important that it's my car that I'm driving around and that it travels where I travel. Otherwise, I'm probably in the park, you know.
Right.
What are you thinking? Like, would that be an invasion of privacy?
What's that?
An invasion of privacy?
Which part?
That people would know it's me driving it around?
No, I mean, just if you ever don't feel like engaging sometimes, if you ever just like have those moments where you don't.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do, but
But you do. Okay.
yeah.
I just wondered. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering how you decide which national figure, national tragedy to do. Like, for instance, you did JFK, MLK. What made you decide to do that over like Fred Hampton or Chicago '68? Or like, how do you account for like choosing in that? And also, do you think that there is a coherent American national identity to begin with, or are you trying to like discover one, or?
Yeah, two really good questions. Well, on the first one, how do I choose? I choose things that resonate with me personally. And that goes for the people that I choose to memorialize as well, like that there's not some kind of either significant cultural contribution or personal resonance. I will leave them out. And the events for those 4 chapters, I tried to choose 2, this is arguable, but I wanted to choose 2 that were triumphant and 2 that were tragic. Whether World War II is triumphant is arguable, but I think that the spirit and the way that it shaped our culture and our identity as a nation was that of triumph. And I do think that's changing radically. It's changed in the last 10 years, and it continues to erode.
Excuse me. I have a question in regards to the evolution of your image. The first work that you showed from '94, like the entire canvas was dense, and then as your work progressed, the kind of relationship to the white space got more and more sparse, and I was just curious about how that evolution happened.
Yeah, it was really kind of forced. I was sort of trying to talk about how I was really focusing on representing that kind of mushrooming of memories and associations, and how that, I mean, I really have an actual image in my head of that. It's like a flower kind of blossoming. You know, I think also the white space in a way for me now is a sense of hope. Like there's this space for something else. That's corny, but that's what I got. Yeah.
You just spoke about the disconnect that you felt when you were interviewing these people about their lives and the product that came from that.
Yeah.
I'm just intrigued in like how interviewing and kind of taking something that's not personal to you but is personal to someone else, if that's challenging and that's where you found that disconnect, or why was there a disconnect between what you think your product was, or was that like disappointing?
Yeah. You know, actually, the other reason that the title Prosthetic Memories is appropriate is because through the process of drawing, after, you know, the interviews happened, and going back through the interviews and then drawing those images, they really did feel like my own. So I didn't feel disconnected from that part of it. The disconnect was in the way the images spoke to their experience. I don't think they have the life of, they just don't feel like they capture and honor those stories.
Do you think that it's in your own, like, by your own fault as an artist, or do you think that's just maybe impossible to really, like, the human interaction that you receive when you are speaking with these people, is there even a way to replicate that, do you think?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about is how do I continue the participation so it's not just me making the work? You know, maybe the disconnect is in leaving them and then going off by myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that would look. You know, I don't know if that means 25 people in my studio drawing with me. Probably not. But that's where I'm trying to figure out, you know, how to bring it together. Maybe it doesn't result in a gallery show of works on paper, you know.
I think though that it's probably a great help to have their interviews in the gallery space as well for the viewer to like sort of recognize that as well. But yet maybe that is sort of like a crutch along with it because it is kind of like creating or generating a feeling that you wanted to portray. But I guess I was interested in that because I think it's a struggle just to, in any essence, to really like replicate that sort of thing, especially for maybe since it's not your own personal memory, but you feel so close to it.
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah.
You explain a lot of your stories behind your work tonight to us. I was wondering, in a gallery setting, how much information is given to the viewer background-wise, or is it more left open for interpretation?
Yeah, it's just left completely open. And that's, you know, that's part of the same question, I think. I mean, there's a frustration on my part with the kind of codified aspect of the work that it requires for full enjoyment, you know, or understanding. But I don't, you know, I also have total faith in the idea that we look at images all the time, we combine them, and we form our own narrative from them. And that's a beautiful thing too. Right? I mean, isn't that your experience? Yeah.
This is a slight turn to the absurd, but I'm curious how you chose the direction to send your space messages in, and if they happen to be in the general vicinity of the many recently discovered exoplanets that might support biological life.
I didn't even know you could aim this.
Sure.
I didn't even know that.
You should talk.
So, you know, I just learned recently that there's such a thing as transmission art. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Cool product.
Yeah.
I have a question. When you were talking about Swoon's work, you noted that she stated that all spaces are potential art spaces. And knowing her, she puts up with details everywhere and anywhere. But when you were saying, when you were talking about some of your work, you were talking about boundaries. That there are certain places that you felt like you're being invasive or you wouldn't put up. And also, one thread that was missing is the art you're putting up is you're very careful not to vandalize to a certain extent. And can you talk about that? Can you talk about like having the boundaries where someone like Swoon's work that we admire, her work is inherently meant to challenge private property and to put up the artist's stake, to put up messages anywhere and everywhere. But you placed some self-imposed boundaries on your work. I'm curious if you could talk about that and the issue of vandalism.
I'm not talking about anybody else's work but my own, especially because I was doing work about love and joy, these sort of over-the-top themes. I thought it was presumptuous to put these images in neighborhoods where perhaps it seemed like I was doling out some kind of medicine. Does that make sense? It doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, I'm assuming those were put up in St. Louis too.
Yeah.
But that might have something to do with it too. That it's
I
a
think
place
it's quite different than New York.
Well, it's a place you know and understand.
Yeah.
Before you start your pieces, do you usually have the entire image in mind? And if you don't, when do you know when to stop?
Oh boy, isn't that the question that teachers are always asking their students? Is it finished? Yeah. Well, that ranges, you know, my answer would range depending on what kind of work we're talking about. But, yeah, I usually start with one thing and then I respond to it. And it's finished when enough information is there, both in terms of content and visual. It's a bad answer, I know.
Well, over time, has it gotten easier? Like in your earlier pieces, did you ever feel like you had to add something to make it be accepted by other people because you didn't feel enough effort into it? And then maybe later on, as you went on, did you feel like I don't have to add anything more because I'm saying what I want to say, or does it not really change over time?
Are you saying that the later work has less information?
Well, not in some of it. Like the very first image you showed looked like there was a lot more structure to it, a lot more like time-consuming, maybe not thought going into the actual physical work being taken on it. And I don't know if that's the case, maybe not of it, but later on, when you, like somebody else mentioned it, you mentioned that there was more white, more space left for interpretation or just on the canvas itself. Is that because you felt more secure with your abilities and how people would look at your work and you figure, I did enough and you should understand this?
I don't think that's a conscious thought, no, but I think there was definitely a slowing down and an effort to pull back and not overload the work. The earlier piece that I showed had a lot of paint on it, and I think that work is a lot easier because if I did something and I didn't like it, I just painted it out. So the printed pieces, you can't make a mistake. You know, that's part of the slowing down because you can't cover it up. So I guess there is a kind of more careful editing that happens in my process now. All right, thank you.
My class will be back in